Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video, and now's the time for me to do a shakedown with the Chevrolet Bolt EV with the new battery. So we're sitting at just over 157,000 miles, 157,015 miles, and so I need to do some shopping anyway, so I'm going to do that sort of long track shopping trip that I normally do. And just sort of test out a lot of the chargers along the way, right? Because I've already used an ABB charger, so I was able to it's not a very long run. It was only about 150, 170 mile drive, but I did stop by a local Electrify America charger, so I have used their ABB Terra HP charger. They're actually putting in those new updated cables, but I don't know if they're going to update the chargers themselves. But the car worked fine, so no issues with that ABB charger. So I'm just going to go through and test a cycle of different chargers in my area. It's not going to be exhaustive, but I'm going to call out each one. Given the amount of range this car now has and the new capacity, it's going to be a struggle to really drive it down that low in range. So a lot of my charging stops are probably only going to be 5 to 10 minutes, maybe at most, just to test out the charger to see if it works with the car, if I'm running into any issues, auto charge on EVgo, that sort of thing. Now, some people who have had their batteries replaced already have commented that part of the issue is with the BMS sort of learning the new capacity that's available to it, and that it was taking them several different charging cycles to get it to fully up the capacity, right? So it would get to 100 and then keep charging, even like on a DC fast charger. So there really is a sort of learning cycle. So this is the first time I've actually allowed the car to charge to full on level 2 AC charging, at least full according to the display, and I'm just kind of keeping it on for a little while, keeping it charged up. I unlocked Hilltop Reserve mode. The update did not give me target charge level like the newer Bolt EVs have, so I still just have the lock out the top 10%, and that's it. Let's get ready to head out. All right, well, I stopped here in Corning just to grab a couple of things from the Olive Pit, and I wanted to check. I haven't really done any research on this trip so far. I didn't check to see which chargers were working, which weren't on PlugShare. Most of the time it ends up not matching my experiences anyway, and then I have to submit an updated PlugShare entry. But this charge point here in Corning is still down the 24 kilowatt, one of the older units that had gone in a long time ago off of I-5. But I wasn't really counting on it being open, but if it was, I would, use the opportunity to test out that 24 kilowatt CPE 100 charge point unit, but alas, I can't. There is, like I've mentioned before, there is a free wire just down from here in Corning, I think 2 exits down, but I'm not going to use that right now. I'm still jamming it up to Reading, and all I can say is so far so good, right? Like, we are making decent time, which doesn't surprise me, right? I don't expect traffic in Northern California, but the battery is just chugging along, right? So I pretty much expect to get to Reading with close to 50% battery, a little bit under because we are, doing 70 plus mile an hour freeway driving. But yeah, this is one of those things where it makes you wonder, in good weather, would you be able to do an entire 240, 250 mile trip, including 70 mile an hour of freeway driving without stopping to charge? And yeah, I think so. Even with the less efficient tires that I have, this battery is, I missed having this much capacity. So let's get back on the road. All right, well, this is cool. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go all the way into Reading to flip around and come back because that's actually where I'm going to be doing a lot of my shopping. And I just wanted to make sense of how I was doing the stops. And like I said, I didn't really plan this at all, but this was a super pleasant surprise. So I decided to pull off here in Red Bluff, and this charge point site, you know, this is part of that EV charging corridor that they did in California as part of the CEC grant funds. Originally, these went in as 50 kilowatt tritium units, and I didn't have great luck with the V-fills. They're pretty loud, and they have a high-pitched whine, kind of finicky, really. So I'm really glad that they exchanged these with the CPE 250. You know, they have the little adjustment where you can pull the cable out. It will reach the car a lot easier. And these are like 152 or 156 amps. So they do max out the Bolt EV. I wish at least two of them were paired, but these are all standalone 62.5 kilowatt DC fast chargers. The nice thing about this site is it does also have level 2 charging, because this is a hotel motel sort of stop, right? We're right next to the Best Western. But then the other cool thing about this one is it also has another one of those grid tie batteries, which I think needs to be more and more emphasized. I never looked at the power rating before, but I went over and checked, and it's up to, I think, 820 volts if I'm remembering, and then 60 amp max current output. So what you can end up seeing from that is it's about a 50 kilowatt off-put. Especially the two of the units together, it looks like they can output at least about 50 kilowatt to offset peak shaving, maybe as much as, I guess, technically 100 kilowatt if it's the voltage. Will go up to over 800 volts. So it really depends on how they have it set up, but that's enough to shave a decent amount of the peak off. Now, the battery charging rate did drop pretty quickly. It peaked at about 40, but I was already over 50% battery. But I don't know if that's the taper yet or if it's the battery temperature. Remember, we started out this trip, it was 35 degrees. I don't know that the battery is fully warmed yet. And I mean, again, we didn't even get below 50% battery. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on with the journey, unplug here really quick and get back on the road. So let's hit the road. All right, my apologies. Too much coffee pit stop, but just a warning. Darby Snakes here. All right, well, Trader Joe's succumbed to our power of shopping, and now it's really on the return trip. So, yeah, we were kind of joined by a Tesla Model 3 over here. I guess when there's an open spot and you see an EV, you park next to the other EV. So, I guess that's good solidarity all around. Let's hit the road. All right, so I did see that this was a CPE 250 as I was pulling off. This is the one at Vittles Restaurant. This is a great stop. I haven't actually had a chance to eat at this restaurant yet, so I can't make a recommendation whether you should stop here or not. One of these days I'll have to stop in for a meal when it makes sense. But yeah, it's just a single 62.5 kilowatt ChargePoint Express 250 charger with a couple of level 2 AC chargers, but it used to be a 50 kilowatt tritium charger, so they've upgraded that. So that's a positive and negative, right? It's good in that they replaced it, because these are a lot more reliable, just better, faster chargers. But I'm not able to actually test out the Tritium V-Fill RT50 or whatever the designation is at this point. But so I'm not able to test another charger. Now this one, we're only hitting like 44 kilowatt right now. So I think the battery could actually still be cool because it is creeping up. It started at like 40 and is now up to like 44, 45, something like that. So it does look like maybe the temperature of the battery is finally starting to warm up. But I verified that it works, but we already tested a CPE 250, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to go ahead and shut the charger off while we're still significantly under 50%, and then run over and test the first generation Electrify America Signet units at the Safeway on the other side of the freeway. So let's head over there. All right, so first try, first success. Now, it's kind of hard to navigate these cables when I'm filming too, so I think it was a little bit more difficult than it would be normally, just because with the app and having one hand with the phone, one hand with the camera. Now, one of the heads on this 350 kilowatt charger is down. The Chatamo CCS 150 kilowatt charger is up, but then the other two look locked out too. The other 350 kilowatt and the other 150 kilowatt. So station 1 and station 3. So I'm just going to log into my phone and just leave a note. I don't really need to charge that long here, right? Our next charging stop will probably be in Corning. To test out the FreeWire. Hopefully that one is up and working. If not, again, no big deal. There's just so many chargers to choose from along this route that it's pretty ridiculous. So, but the thing is, like I said, I want to submit a fix-it repair for the two chargers at the site that look like they're just locked in an updating screen. So that's not good. But this is the older first generation Electrify America started installing anyway of the Signet high power chargers. Again, these were ones that had issues initially or early on. Now this one did, when I plugged in, it ramped up to over 50 kilowatt and then started dialing back. And again, I don't know if that's behavior based on battery temperature or what, but it did peak over 50 kilowatt, even up around 50% battery. So I will be mapping out the Bolt EV's charging curve in a little bit more detail with this new battery, but I still want the BMS to settle a little bit more before I do that. But otherwise, like I said, everything's worked just fine. So I'm just going to leave those notes in Electrify America's app and then head out. We're here in Corning at the FreeWire charger that was installed here at I believe the TA travel stop. There are a few different travel stops. I know there's a Love's here as well, and I think Electrify America is the one that now has an agreement with Love's where they might start installing chargers over there. But yeah, I went over here. This one, it's interesting, right? The FreeWire can be non-networked, or a lot of them right now are either EV Connect or now Shell Recharge, right? So, and maybe that has to do with the fact that this is also a Shell gas station here. But yeah, that's the payment option that they went through. So, these FreeWire chargers, when you see them, you don't necessarily know what network they're with. But the good thing is, it seems like for the most part, regardless of who's managing their payment, the pricing for someone who pays just at point of sale with a credit card is the same as a member's pricing, which is really, in my opinion, it either needs to be super close or the same, right? Because otherwise you run into an issue of fairness, and yeah, there should be some membership perks, but realistically, you don't want it to be punitive, right, to pay with a credit card. You already see this at gas stations where there's a slightly higher charge for gas if you're paying with credit card versus cash, or more often than not, you get a discount if you're paying with cash. And that's because of the credit card transaction fees. But most of these networks are loading your wallet anyway, right? Your virtual wallet with cash from a credit card. And so they're still incurring that percentage fee. So I'm not exactly sure why there should be such a huge discrepancy between the member pricing and the point of sale pricing, because we have to understand that, yeah, a lot of high mileage, long distance traveling people have gravitated towards EVs early on. One, because they're typically more affluent, so they have the money to, I hate to say it, waste on an EV. They have the money to spend on an EV and have it not work out, where someone who is less affluent doesn't have that option. But those are the people who also have more freedom of movement and freedom of time. Maybe they work remotely, maybe they don't have to be in the office, maybe they're independent contractors, whatever the case may be, but they're free to move around a lot more, and so they put a lot more miles on their vehicles, and so they gravitate towards something like an EV. And we're not going to be seeing as high of a percentage of that moving into the future. As electric vehicles become more affordable, we're going to see more average people driving EVs, and an average person driving an EV is going to do 90 to 95% of their charging at home, rarely go on long trips. They're not going to need a membership with a half dozen different charging providers. They might charge once or twice on their trip at a public fast charger, and they're going to want to pay with credit card and not have to deal with a membership, not have to deal with an app, not have to deal with any of the other stuff that electric vehicle owners right now are accustomed to dealing with, juggling a dozen different charging providers, right? So I think it's really important moving forward that charging providers really emphasize the ability to pay at point of sale without a punitive pricing. Now, speaking of punitive pricing, they do charge 50 cents a kilowatt hour here. So yeah, it was not, I love these stations, big, bright displays, colorful, very, graphically pleasing. The UI is very pleasing. Plugged in, jumped right up to 50 plus kilowatt. All that, great, wonderful, love it. And then you see that it's 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Now that's still way cheaper than the $5 a gallon gas that people are paying, literally 50 feet behind me. But it's still probably 10, 15, 20 cents more than what I think the reasonable rate would be for a public charging provider for DC power anyway. So enough of that. We've tested the charger more than enough. We need to get back on the road. And I think the next stop is the EV Go, and we're going to test and see if auto charge works. Let's hit the road. Well, here's the moment of truth. We're going to plug into an EV Go charger and find out if my plug-in charge was affected in any way. So this is the first time I've had a chance to plug it into an EV Go charger since the battery swap. So let's just see if it works right away. Yeah, so this has been pretty bulletproof since they implemented. Even though I had it in the beta, I was worried about whether I needed to have my app on, and so far that hasn't been a requirement. The only times it hasn't worked are when the charger itself was down. So it's now initiating session. So yeah, it looks like nothing really changed with Ooh, that's a big thump there, BTC Power. Yeah, so it looks like nothing really changed with the auto charge. I mean, it really shouldn't have, but I mean, since the battery's been replaced, charged right away, just straight up to, like 44 kilowatts. So, which is the most that these can output really anyway, somewhere between 45 and 50 kilowatt are the most they can really output depending on vehicle voltage. So I think I saw like 48 or 49 in the Kia EV6, which is pretty cool. But it's 125 amp limitation. But yeah, these are the BTC Power L3S. So S for slim. I think the R, you could say rectangle. I don't know, maybe. Certainly not round, but I think it's supposed to be regular. But anyway, yeah, so this is working perfectly fine. So I'm really happy to see that. I haven't had any issues with EVgo Auto Charge really at all, and this is just one more example of that. So far, I'm just not really seeing a problem. I've gained a decent amount of confidence with the Bolt EV at this point with this new battery, that I think it's going to work as flawlessly and as bulletproof as it always has. Obviously, you still have to lift the cable with the heavier Huber plus Sooner liquid-cooled cables, but that's nothing new. But no compatibility issues, nothing like that. And then the only other thing is to just figure out what the heck is going on with the charging curve, because GM did change something with this bigger battery pack, but it looks like my car already kind of had that from before. It was just sort of less prominent because I was already suffering from 10% battery degradation, less efficient tires, all of that. So I was way below the range I was used to anyway, and I was already adjusting my trips to have to compensate for that. This newer design, though, I mean, I'm tempted to just jam it 220, 230 miles before my first stop, but the problem is it seems like if you dip below 5 to 10% battery and you start a charging session, say at 0, 1, 2, 3%, it locks you into a slower charging profile. So I'm going to have to investigate that more, but I don't want to do that or a capacity test until after I'm confident that the BMS has remapped and figured out all of this glorious new capacity that's available to it. Well, let's just hit the road. All right, well, that's a bit of a bummer. I decided to stop by the Willows Rest area, the BTC Power L3R charger that Caltrans installed here. I've actually used this charger before, and the BTC Power L3R charger that Caltrans installed on the northbound rest area on the other side of the freeway. So I've actually used both of them, and they were functioning, but that was about a year ago now, a long, long time, and these rest areas have been closed the entire time for maintenance and everything else. So it appears that maybe they just haven't powered these back up again. So I know that's somewhere on their plan to do, but I wanted to come and verify for myself. Time to hit the road again. We made it home just fine, 246.4 miles. Again, this is with the Continental Pure Contact, so that's probably overestimated by a little bit. So say maybe like 243 accurate miles, but the overall efficiency was only about 3.6 miles per kilowatt hour. We didn't really spend all that much time charging overall, maybe 30 minutes total. So we used more capacity than what this new battery should have, right? So it's registering 68.8 kilowatt hours, whereas this new battery, when I do the actual capacity test, I'd be surprised if we see more than 65 kilowatt hours usable. But so we exceeded that, but even with exceeding it, we still have nearly 50% of battery left. So most of that charging would have been unnecessary. I think I could have probably done this entire, 240 to 250 mile trip with maybe a single 10-minute charging stop. And that's, again, driving at freeway speeds. But I think the biggest takeaway is nothing's really changed with the Bolt EV in terms of its compatibility, right? Every charger that I've been able to use before, I'm able to use now. Auto charge still functions. I didn't see any weird quirks or anything else. I mean, the only things that I actually saw that were out of the ordinary were things that could have just been attributed to battery temperature, right? Either running a little bit cold or running a little bit hot, but nothing out of the ordinary. People had mentioned having like a lot of gurgling noise. Now, I do sometimes hear the battery coolant system cycling, but nothing to the point that I would think that, something's been missed, right? So I will probably check the battery coolant level, but we're hitting a time where, it's going to be cool enough, even long drives. I'm not really worried about having slightly low coolant, but I didn't see any, like I said, any issues. So it looks like right now, other than just relearning how much capacity is available, the battery is solid. So, yeah, I'm fully confident in my ability to take this down to LA for the LA Auto Show. Like I said, that'll end up being about a 1,500 mile trip, probably, with all of the things that I plan to do along the way. I do think I'm going to maybe try to avoid Electrify America entirely for that 1,500 mile trip too. I know people say, oh, you're in California, so you have way more options than everybody else does, and that might be true. But I also feel that it's important to showcase what those other options are, because a lot of those networks are making inroads in areas outside of California. So even if you don't have them in your area now, you could probably look forward to seeing chargers from those other networks going in the somewhat near future, right? And that's not even counting the fact that we're finally getting to a point where there's enough EV population that independent businesses can just say, hey, we see a potential value in offering this service and the number of customers that we could bring on site. And so there is enough of a business case now that maybe you don't even need a network, right? You could actually, as a business owner, just install a couple of chargers that are compelling for the location, the stop, for the business, and that's good enough, right? So don't discount the possibility of being able to travel in areas outside of California effectively, outside of the Electrify America network. And again, I have nothing against Electrify America. I'm super happy for what they've done. My issue is that right now they're sort of the target for people who dislike EVs or dislike the public charging infrastructure, and they're the focus of basically all non-Tesla EV owners in terms of what they use when they travel. So being able to showcase alternatives, I think, will be important. And it looks like this Bolt EV is fully up to the task. And so when I do that trip, I'll probably take that as an opportunity to start mapping out some of the idiosyncrasies of what I'm seeing with the Bolt EV's new charging profile that comes with this 64 kilowatt hour battery pack. So stay tuned for that actual testing. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments, anything you want me to check for or look at post battery swap with this new 64, 65, 66 kilowatt hour battery pack. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And Thank you for watching.